From a young age, I knew I was destined to be the crown princess. But on our wedding night, the crown prince, Alistair, deliberately went to the wrong bridal chamber and consummated his marriage with Lyanna, a handmaiden to the empress. Lyanna was the empress's most favored attendant, having once taken a knife for her. Because of this, the empress's anger was fleeting, and she soon gave her consent. My parents were livid. My family commanded an army of 700,000. How could we suffer such a humiliation? They wanted to storm the palace gates and demand justice from the emperor himself. But I gently tugged on their sleeves and urged them to be patient. That very day, I sought a personal audience with the emperor to plead on Alistair's behalf. I beseech your majesty to allow Lyanna into the Eastern Palace, to fulfill the crown prince's heart's desire. A mere palace maid was not worth my concern. His heart was not with me, nor had mine ever been stirred. What I desired was never Alistair the man. It was the honor of being crown princess, the future position of empress, and the eternal glory of my family clan. News that I had pleaded for the crown prince to allow Lyanna into the Eastern Palace spread throughout the court within half a day. Reactions were varied, but most saw it as a joke, the daughter of the Shia family, learning to bow and scrape before she was even officially titled. Only my father, after receiving the 8-word message, I sent back with a trusted aide, "Hold our forces. Await future reward," remained silent for a long moment before finally suppressing the indignation of his generals. 3 days later, an imperial decree was issued. The investiture ceremony for the crown princess would proceed as planned. As for Lyanna, with the rank of secondary consort, she was to be quietly carried into the Eastern Palace through a side gate in a small sedan chair on the same day. The ceremony was grand and solemn. Clad in the heavy, intricate robes of the crown princess, I walked up the white marble steps under the watchful eyes of all the court officials, and received the golden tsu and imperial seal from the master of ceremonies. Alistair stood beside me. He was handsome and stood tall, the very picture of a perfect heir, but the gaze he cast upon me held a hint of scrutiny and coldness. I met his eyes and curved my lips into a perfectly gentle smile. He was likely wondering why I hadn't cried or caused a scene, why I had even personally delivered his beloved to his side. He didn't understand. What I wanted was never his pitying affection. That night, as expected, he did not come to my chambers. My handmaiden, Iris, removed my hairpins, her voice tinged with frustration. "You may leave." The candles flickered, leaving me alone in the vast hall. I walked to the window and looked towards the moon-embracing pavilion. It was brightly lit, a clear sign of their passionate reunion. There was no sourness in my heart, only a cold, calculating clarity. Alistair's move was rash and foolish. He used my humiliation to elevate Lyanna, but in doing so he had placed both himself and his beloved on a pyre to be roasted. A favored concubine who caused the crown prince to neglect his duties on his wedding night, and shamed the family of a powerful general, would become nothing but a living target in this treacherous palace. The next morning, as the crown princess, I sat in the seat of honor to receive the salutations of the Eastern Palace's concubines. Lyanna arrived at a perfectly calculated time, dressed in a crimson gown, her face flushed with the alluring glow of a night of passion and a hint of triumph. She curtsied according to etiquette, her voice soft. "This servant, Lyanna, pays her respects to Her Highness, the crown princess." I did not immediately bid her rise. I simply lifted my teacup, gently stirring the surface, my calm gaze falling on her trembling fingertips. The hall fell silent. The other concubines held their breath. After a moment, I spoke, my voice gentle but filled with an undeniable authority. "You may rise, secondary consort. Now that you are part of the Eastern Palace, you must uphold the rules, serve the prince diligently, and bear heirs for the royal family. That is your duty." I gifted her a set of gold hair ornaments, the same as I had given the other concubines. It preserved her dignity while quashing any notion she had of being special. As she accepted the gift and offered her thanks, the triumphant look on her face finally faded, replaced by a cautiousness. I watched her, a cold smile in my heart. Alistair could give her his affection, but what I held was her official rank, the rules and the power of the mistress of the Eastern Palace. His affection was like flowing water, but the power in my hands was an iron fortress. A few days later, at a palace banquet, the Empress called me to her side, her tone consoling. "My dear child, you have been wronged, Alistair." He was merely foolish for a moment. I lowered my eyes, my posture deferential. "Your Majesty is too kind. The Crown Prince is a man of deep feeling, which is a blessing for the nation. Secondary consort Lyanna saved your Majesty's life. It is only right that I treat her well. As the Crown Prince's primary wife, my duty is to prioritize His Highness and the stability of the Eastern Palace." The Empress looked at me, a flash of genuine appreciation and relief in her eyes. What she needed was a crown princess who was tolerant, sensible, and could maintain order, not a jealous shrew who would throw the palace into turmoil. It was late when I returned to the Eastern Palace. Iris draped a cloak over my shoulders. "Your Highness, today at the palace, why didn't you take the opportunity to ask the Empress?" I raised a hand to silence her and walked to my desk. On it lay the Crown Princess's imperial seal, its surface gleaming with a cool, gentle light. "Iris, look at this seal," I said, gently tracing the intricate phoenix design, my voice calm. "It represents power, status, and the honor of the Xie clan. As for where the Crown Prince's heart lies," I looked out at the dark night, a faint smile on my lips. "What does that have to do with me?" Twilight fell, casting a final crimson glow upon the walls of the Eastern Palace. 3 months had passed since Lyanna's arrival, and true to form, Alistair had never again set foot in my chambers. During the day, he maintained the facade of a proper crown prince, accompanying me for official duties. But the moment we returned to the Eastern Palace, his eyes would follow only the direction of the moon-embracing pavilion. Whispers began to circulate. The Crown Princess held an empty title, unable to even hold her husband's attention. I paid them no mind, continuing to manage the palace affairs with grace and efficiency. When I visited the Empress, I never complained, only presented the meticulously organized accounts of the Eastern Palace. At first, the Empress offered words of comfort, but seeing my lack of ambition, a shadow of displeasure began to cross her brow. She could tolerate her son's infatuation, but not the long-term absence of a legitimate heir. The time was ripe. One afternoon, as I was feeding the koi in the pavilion, Iris approached. "Your Highness, it is done." Secondary consort Lyanna's brother, coincidentally, met the third son of the Earl of Yongcheng at the West Market a few days ago. I sprinkled fish food into the pond, watching the carp leap. The Earl's third son was a notorious wastrel, known for his love of gambling and horse racing. Lyanna's brother, puffed up with his sister's new status, was easily provoked. A few flattering words about how the brother of the royal consort must surely be skilled in such matters were enough to make him lose his head. "Is everything arranged at the racing grounds?" "Flawlessly, the horse has been tampered with. It will bolt within half a lap, and the Earl's son's attendants are all our people." I nodded. 2 days later, terrible news reached the Eastern Palace. Lyanna's brother had been in a racing accident. His horse, suddenly spooked, had thrown him, causing severe injuries, and had then crashed into the entourage of the Grand Princess Kanging, who happened to be nearby. The princess was shaken, and the emperor was furious. The moon-embracing pavilion was filled with wails. Lyanna knelt before Alistair, begging him to save her brother. He wanted to, of course, but this involved a senior member of the royal family, and the evidence was irrefutable. The moment he spoke up in the throne room, the emperor shut him down. "For the brother of a mere concubine, you would bend the law and disrespect your own aunt. Alistair, is this how a crown prince behaves?" He was confined to the Eastern Palace, forbidden to leave. A storm was brewing. I continued my daily routine, visiting the small chapel to pray for the Grand Princess's recovery, and copying scriptures, as if the turmoil outside had nothing to do with me. 3 days later, a summons came from the Empress. Her face was like ice as she threw a formal complaint on the floor. It listed numerous crimes committed by Lyanna's brother seizing land, abusing his power all under the protection of the Eastern Palace's name. "Crown Princess," she said, her voice cold and weary. "Do you admit your fault?" I immediately prostrated my— "Your Majesty, please quell your anger. It is my failure for not properly restraining the members of the Eastern Palace, which allowed the secondary consort's brother to stray and tarnish the royal family's name. I am willing to accept any punishment." I admitted fault swiftly, taking the blame for a lack of supervision, without mentioning Lyanna at all. The Empress stared at me for a long moment, then waved a hand. "Rise. This is not entirely your fault." She knew where the real problem lay. My incompetence and meekness only highlighted the audacity of the moon embracing pavilion and the prince's blatant favoritism. Lyanna, in her desperation, cried and pleaded with the prince day and night, making a spectacle of herself that the entire palace witnessed and whispered about. That evening, Alistair was summoned to the emperor's study. The emperor was so enraged his shouts could be heard outside. "If you continue to be so reckless, so consumed by personal feelings, then I see no reason for you to remain the crown prince. And that Lyanna, she cannot stay." Those 3 words, "she cannot stay," shattered the last of Alistair's hopes. The emperor was clear: unless Alistair consummated the marriage with me and produced a legitimate heir, proving the stability of the Eastern Palace, Lyanna's brother would not be spared. Alistair returned to the palace, his heart heavy. He had intended to explain the situation to Lyanna, to ask her to be understanding, but she wouldn't listen. She just cried and demanded he save her brother, no matter the cost. "Is that truly what you want?" he asked, his voice strained. "No matter the price?" "Yes. You must save him," she declared. The last bit of light in his eyes died. "Fine. As you wish." He stumbled to my chambers late that night, a lonely, defeated figure in the pale moonlight. I was reading by candlelight. When he entered, I was not surprised. I simply stood and curtsied. "Your Highness." He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot, and tried to speak, but the words were caught in his throat. I waited, my heart as clear as a mirror. I had anticipated all of this. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and hoarse. "It is late. Let us retire." The red candles burned brightly, illuminating the complex emotions on his face. I took the initiative and helped him with his outer robe, my fingertips brushing against his throat. He tensed but didn't pull away. "Your Highness," I said, blowing out the candles, my voice a soft whisper in the darkness. "Tomorrow I will personally go to the Grand Princess and present the scriptures I have copied. I will plead on behalf of Lyanna's brother, Rosalind." His voice was dry. "This time, I have wronged you." I moved closer, my arms encircling him. "Your Highness, we are husband and wife. To share your burdens is my duty." I spoke close to his ear. His own breathing grew heavy. In the dim moonlight, I could see the flush on his ears. I lowered my eyes, concealing the cold sneer. Following the erotic art I had studied, I moved to meet him. He finally gave in, a low growl escaping his lips as he pulled me into a fierce embrace. The crimson bed curtains fell, swaying gently in the night. The next morning, his side of the bed was empty. Iris helped me dress. "His Highness went to the moon embracing pavilion before dawn," she whispered. I simply smiled as I applied my makeup. "No matter. Tell our people to let secondary consort Lyanna know, unintentionally, that the only reason the prince came to me was because she begged him to save her brother." Iris understood. "Yes, Your Highness. If she knows she was the one who requested it, her gratitude will surely be profound." I colored my lips. If she knew she was the one who had pushed him into my bed, how bitter would that be? But this was just the beginning. What I wanted was not a single night of favor. It was to plant a thorn between them that could never be removed. In the moon-embracing pavilion, upon hearing where Alistair had spent the night, Lyanna shattered a teacup. "He promised me," she whispered in disbelief. When he arrived, exhausted, to explain, she broke down. But the words, "It was all to save your brother," were like a bucket of cold water. She threw herself into his arms, her eyes full of tears. "Your Highness, you have suffered so much for my sake." Alistair, seeing her forced understanding, felt a pang of guilt and held her tighter. From that day on, Alistair began to visit my chambers every few nights. Lyanna would stand at the entrance of her pavilion, watching him go, biting her lip, but my belly remained flat. He had to visit more often. I, on the other hand, was more eager for a child than Lyanna was. Only a legitimate heir would truly secure my position. At first, he was distant. But he was a man of flesh and blood. Seeing my unwavering compliance and the perfect order I maintained, his tense demeanor began to soften. He would sometimes even ask about my childhood on the frontier. The autumn hunt was announced. The moon-embracing pavilion was filled with the sound of smashing porcelain. Alistair was taking only me, his primary consort. In the privacy of our hunting tent, the constant proximity relaxed us both. One night, he stumbled in, drunk, while I was bathing. He froze, staring at the figure in the steamy water. "Your Highness," I called softly, making no move to hide. Instead, I slowly rose from the water, letting the droplets cascade down my skin. In the candlelight, he swallowed, his eyes dark with desire. "Rosalind," he murmured my name, then swept me into his arms and carried me to the bed. That night, he was a different man, gentle and utterly captivated. 7 days later, we returned to the palace. My monthly courses were 5 days late. I suspected, but I remained calm. One morning, as I was pruning flowers in the courtyard, Lyanna stormed in. "You are truly skilled, sister," she said, her voice dripping with acid. "But the prince always comes to me after he leaves you. He says your sanctimonious face is boring." I calmly snipped a dead branch. "Is that so? Then why are you in such a state today? Have you given up on saving your brother?" She froze, all her bravado gone. She glared at me, then hissed. "All you know how to do is threaten me with my brother. The prince's heart will always be mine." I just smiled. "I hope you can always believe that." After she left, Iris whispered, "Your Highness, she hates you now. She might. Let her hate," I said, my gaze falling on my still flat stomach. A person whose cards have all been revealed is no longer a threat. A month later, at a palace banquet, she cornered me while Alistair was away. "Sister," she said, her voice just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "it has been so long. Why is there still no news from your belly? My brother can't wait in prison forever." I took a sip of wine. "Secondary consort, the matter of royal heirs is not for you to discuss so lightly. As for your brother, he broke the law. His fate has nothing to do with my womb." She was about to retort when she saw Alistair returning. She grabbed my wrist, her voice suddenly breaking into a sob. "Sister, I know you resent me, but how can you wish for my brother to die in prison?" With that, she stumbled backward, pulling me with her into the nearby ornamental pond. "Help." The water closed over my head. In the chaos, I saw Alistair dive in without a second thought. Swimming straight for the struggling Lyanna, he pulled her to the bank, never once looking back at me. Fortunately, Iris was a strong swimmer and quickly pulled me out. I was soaked and shivering. On the bank, Lyanna was sobbing in Alistair's arms. "Your Highness." I told her I might be with child. And she pushed me. "Our baby." I stared at her, shocked. "Pregnant? You lie!" Lyanna shrieked. "You're her servant, of course you'd defend her." Alistair's face was grim. He clearly believed her. He looked at my pathetic state with nothing but disgust. "Guards, take the crown princess!" Before he could finish, the world spun, and I fainted. I awoke in the Empress's warm chambers. She was holding my hand, her face a mixture of joy and reprimand. "Rosalind, my dear, you are 2 months with child. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I feigned a weak blush. "Your Majesty, I wanted to wait until the 3rd month, to give you and His Majesty a surprise." She chuckled, her expression softening. "You are always so sensible." Just then, the Emperor and Alistair entered, The emperor glared at his son. Fool! Rosalind is carrying my grandchild. How could she possibly push anyone? Apologize to her at once. Alistair looked at me, his expression complex, then mumbled, Rosalind, I misunderstood you. I just shook my head weakly. Your Highness was just worried. I understand. Lyanna, standing by, was pale with fury. The Empress gave her a cool glance. Lyanna, I had thought you were a sensible girl. It seems I was mistaken. Lyanna fell to her knees. Your Majesty, forgive me. I was just so scared of losing the baby. Alistair tried to intercede. Mother, she was a victim too. The Empress waved a hand. Enough. Since you are also with child, you will rest in your pavilion. You are not to leave without permission. The words were a thunderclap. It was, in effect, house arrest. Later, alone with Iris, I gently touched my still flat stomach and smiled. This child had come at the perfect time. Your Highness, Iris whispered. When did you? I laughed. I didn't know, of course, but at that moment, admitting it would both clear me of suspicion and put Lyanna in her place. Why wouldn't I? The next day, gifts poured into the Eastern Palace. Most of them were for me. Lyanna stood on her veranda, her eyes like poison, watching the procession. I walked over to her, my voice, a soft whisper. You had quite a scare yesterday, sister, but now that we are both with child, you must be more careful. Her hand shot out to push me. I was ready. The moment her fingers brushed my sleeve, I tripped and fell backward with a cry. Rosalind, Alistair's voice. He rushed over just in time to see me on the ground, clutching my stomach, while Lyanna's hand was still outstretched. It wasn't me. I didn't touch her, she cried, her face white with panic. But I just looked at him, my eyes full of silent, tearful accusation. He scooped me into his arms and shot her a cold look. Stay in your pavilion. Do not leave without my permission. That night, I pleaded with him. Your Highness, don't blame Lyanna. It was for her brother's sake. Please, stay with me tonight. He looked at my pale face and relented. As I lay in his arms, I whispered, Your Highness, tomorrow, let me go to the Emperor. Lyanna's brother has done wrong, but for the sake of her and her unborn child, perhaps his life could be spared. Alistair was deeply moved. Rosalind, you are always so considerate. I have wronged you. I buried my face in his chest, hiding a cold smile. The next day, I pleaded with the Emperor. For the sake of my unborn child's good fortune. The Emperor, praising my virtue, commuted her brother's sentence to exile. That evening, I had Iris dress me in my finest, a new pair of pearl earrings glittering at my lobes. Your Highness, she said. The prince went to the moon embracing pavilion as soon as he returned from court. He probably won't. I just smiled at my reflection. He will come. And he did. Near midnight he entered, the chill of the night air clinging to him. Rosalind, you have worked hard. I feigned sleepiness and turned into his arms. As long as I can ease your Highness's burdens, it is no hardship. He sighed and held me tighter. You are the only one who understands Lyanna. She caused another scene today. I said nothing. Her brother was safe. She had no more leverage and had likely become even more demanding, pushing him further away, and the news of my father and brother's great victory in the Northwest had reached the capital that morning. Alistair knew exactly where he needed to be. In the dim moonlight, I smiled. The game was won. My father and brother's victories in the Northwest brought a flood of rewards from the Emperor, and Alistair's visits to my chambers became more frequent. I knew it was a political gesture, but I played my part. Lyanna's jealousy was palpable. I said one day. It is time for some movement from the moon-embracing pavilion. Keep a close watch on anyone handling herbs and medicines. 3 days later, Iris reported that a package of a powerful abortifacient had been smuggled into the palace. She is impatient, I said with a small smile. Have it switched into her daily bird's nest soup. Make sure she is the one to receive it. That evening, as I was playing chess with Alistair, a maid from Lyanna's pavilion burst in. Your Highness. The secondary consort. She is bleeding. When we arrived, the physician was just leaving, shaking his head. Your Highness, my condolences. The child could not be saved. Lyanna, pale and weak, pointed a trembling finger at me. It was her, the crown princess. She poisoned my soup. Alistair's eyes darkened. I feigned shock. Sister, what are you saying? That soup is a daily ration for us both. Your Highness, I said, turning to him. This is most strange. Perhaps we should investigate who handled the ingredients today, and who has had improper contact with the outside. An investigation was launched. Within the hour, the evidence was presented. Lyanna's own trusted maid had purchased the drug from an apothecary. No, it is a setup, Lyanna cried. I interrupted softly. Sister, could it be that? You never wanted the prince's child in the first place? Nonsense, Alistair snapped. How could she not want my child? I feigned hesitation. I only heard that before she entered the palace, the secondary consort was very close to a distant cousin, who now serves in the city guard. They were almost betrothed. Alistair spun to face her. Is this true? You never told me? Her face went white. Your Highness, that was in the past. We have no connection now. No connection. I raised an eyebrow, taking a small cloth bag from Iris. Then why did someone go to the trouble of having these salted plums? A specialty from your hometown, sent to you just a few days ago. You treasured them so much you hid them at the bottom of your jewelry box. The bag contained a few ordinary plums. Alistair's face was like a thundercloud. He stared at her, his eyes cold and unfamiliar. Your Highness, please, listen to me, she cried, trying to grab him. Enough! He threw her hand off with such force she fell back onto the bed. I've heard enough. You, take care of yourself. He left without a backward glance, leaving her to her hysterical sobs. I stood at the door for a moment, then turned and walked into the cool moonlight. What a beautiful night. Lyanna, having lost both the child and the prince's favor, shut herself away. Alistair, though he did not punish her further, never visited her again and took to drinking heavily. One night, he came to my chambers, reeking of wine. He collapsed into my arms, burying his face in my neck. Rosalind, why did it all turn out like this? I held him, gently stroking his hair. Your Highness. Some things, perhaps, were wrong from the very beginning. He stiffened. Then a deep, primal desire took over his eyes. He was more gentle than ever before. The next morning, he stayed for breakfast, a new subtle dependence in his eyes. Just as he was serving me, Lyanna appeared at the door. She was dressed in a plain, moon-white dress, her face pale, her hair simply pinned. My heart skipped a beat. She had never dressed so plainly. Your Highness, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I dreamt of the day we first met in the garden. You said you loved me most in this dress, that I looked like a magnolia in the moonlight. His hand, holding the chopsticks, froze. His expressions, it is my misfortune to have lost your child, she sobbed. I only ask that you take care of yourself. Her words struck a chord in his heart. He rose, went to her, and pulled her into an embrace. The past is the past. Over his shoulder, she shot me a look of pure triumph. As they left, Iris stomped her foot in frustration. I calmly took a bite of my bird's nest soup. What is the rush? I said with a small smile. The harder she tries, the harder she will fall when the prince finally sees her true face. As my pregnancy advanced, the Lantern Festival arrived. On the way back from the palace banquet, I was in the carriage with Alistair and Lyanna. Sister, I said with a warm smile, would you like to feel the baby kick? I took her hand and placed it on my swollen belly. The moment our hands touched, she flinched and pulled away. This was my moment. I let out a cry and fell back against the carriage wall, clutching my stomach. Ah, my belly, Your Highness. Save our child. Alistair, waking with a start, saw me and his face went white with panic. Rosalind, I'm here! Your Highness! Don't blame Lyanna! I gasped, She didn't mean it. I didn't. I didn't push her, Lyanna shrieked. Enough! He roared, his eyes full of a new, final disappointment. Lyanna, you have disappointed me beyond words. She is carrying my heir. She pleaded for your brother. And you would harm her out of jealousy. When did you become so unrecognizable? He stopped, his chest heaving. Your Highness, it hurts. The baby, I moaned, a stain of red spreading on my dress. He saw the blood and roared at the driver. Faster, back to the palace. He carried me into the birthing chamber, leaving a screaming Lyanna behind. The labor was long and agonizing, but I endured it. My husband, I don't think I can make it, I whispered, my voice carrying through the screen. Rosalind, don't say that! You will be fine, he cried, his voice filled with a terror I had never heard before. She is not some village woman, he snapped at Lyanna, who was trying to offer useless comfort outside. She is in pain because of you. My love, I fear I will not see the morning. I let out a final weak cry and let my arm fall limp. Rosalind, he burst into the room grabbing my hand. I forbid you to die. I need you to live so I can make it up to you. Alistair refused to leave. She is my wife, and that is my child. I am not going anywhere. Lyanna, hearing his declaration, collapsed. The physician revived me, and with Alistair holding my hand, I gave one last push. A loud, healthy cry filled the room. Congratulations, Your Highness. The Empress wanted her executed for harming a royal child. I, feigning weakness, pleaded for her life. Your Majesty, she was just foolish. Now that my child and I are safe, perhaps, we can spare her. The Empress relented. Fine. For the life you once saved me, you may live, but you will be confined to the cold palace for the rest of your days. But Lyanna was not one to be contained. On the night of the old emperor's death, as the palace was in mourning, I had the guards at the cold palace removed and her food drugged. The next day, as the nation mourned, she burst into the throne room, dressed in a garish red gown, her face painted, laughing madly. Your Highness, I knew you would come for me. The Empress was apoplectic. Wretch, how dare you disrespect the late emperor, Alistair? Now the new emperor looked at her, then at the shocked court officials. I gently touched his arm. Your Majesty, I said, using his new title. The entire court is watching. You cannot let personal feelings interfere with your duty. His expression hardened. He took a step forward, his voice filled with a sorrowful finality. Take this madwoman away. Beat her to death with rods. Her laughter froze on her face. Her screams were cut short. He never looked back. The last vestiges of his affection for her had been consumed by the demands of his new power. As the new emperor, I helped him select a harem of concubines, many of whom bore a passing resemblance to Lyanna. Over time, the memory of the original faded. 10 years later, Alistair, worn out by his duties and his pleasures, passed away. As the funeral bells tolled, I sat before my mirror, still a beautiful and powerful woman. Your Majesty, it is time to change into the mourning robes, Iris said. I rose and let them dress me in the robes of the Empress Dowager. My son was the new emperor, and I was the regent. I had never asked for love. What I wanted, from the very beginning, was clear to stand at the pinnacle of power and protect the glory of my family. And now, everything was just as it should be.